The Stolen Bride. Before the Spaniards came with their iron and crosses, when our gods still walked the rice terraces and answered with flood or famine, there thrived the Taboli people by Lake Sebu's whispering shores. Here, abaca fibers grew thick as a man's wrist, and the sacred Tanalic cloths wove themselves in women's dreams. Here, love was a sharper blade than any Campilan sword. The village elders whisper of 3 unbreakable laws. Never look too long at the black waters of Lake Sebu. For Fu Dalu, the dreaming god, prefers his brides willing. Never cut the crimson threads, for a Tanalak left unfinished demands a life in payment. Never love a marked woman, for the god's jealousy burns hotter than monsoon fire. Datu Maharlik broke all 3. This is the story carved into the bones of our ancestors, of a warrior prince who defied heaven to save a weaver girl, and in doing so, drowned a kingdom. The world was still half asleep when Ligaya slipped from her family's Torogan house, the bamboo floorboards creaking under her bare feet. Outside, the mist hung thick over Lake Sebu, swallowing the sounds of waking birds. She could taste the dampness in the air, a metallic tang from last night's rain, mixing with the earthy perfume of taro leaves unfurling in the undergrowth. Her toes sank into the cool mud as she made her way to the riverbank, the hem of her malong dragging through dewy grass. The river was low this season, its waters sluggish and dark like brewed salabat. She knelt beside a flat stone worn smooth by generations of women before her, its surface stained with decades of dye work, streaks of yellow from turmeric, deep blues from indigo, and the faintest ghosts of red from annatto seeds long since washed away. From her woven basket, she pulled bundles of abaca fibers, peeled, beaten, and combed until they shone like pale silk. These were her dreams given form. As she submerged them in the water, her reflection stared back, a face too sharp for beauty, eyes too dark for innocence. At 19 reigns, she had already outlived 2 suitors, one taken by a crocodile while fishing, the other felled by a rival tribe's arrow. The village whispered that Fu Dalu himself had claimed them, leaving her untouched for his own purposes. The first time Datu Maharlik spoke to her, he had blood on his hands. It was during the Kagaz festival, when the young men returned from their first raid. He stood taller than the others, his chestnut skin gleaming with sweat and victory. Around his neck hung 3 crocodile teeth, proof he'd slain the beast that killed Ligaya's first betrothed. "For you," he'd said, pressing the teeth into her palm. His fingers were still warm from battle. "So you'll know his spirit is at peace." She'd thrown them in the river. Now, 2 seasons later, he still came like a stubborn shadow. She heard him before she saw him, the particular cadence of his walk, the way his brass ankle bracelets chimed with every step. "You'll ruin those fibers," Maharlik said, crouching beside her. Up close, she could see the fresh cut on his collarbone, a training wound from yesterday's sparring. The scent of smoked coconut oil clung to his skin, the same oil warriors used to dress their blades. Ligaya didn't look up. "And you'll ruin your father's temper if he finds you here again." From the folds of his Lenawag sash, he produced a clay jar sealed with beeswax. When he pried it open, the air filled with the pungent sweetness of lipa dye, the rarest crimson traded from the Visayan Islands, enough to color an entire bridal blanket. Her hands stilled. You stole from the Datu's tribute chest. Borrowed, he corrected, grinning. His teeth were very white against his sun-darkened face. I'll replace it before the next full moon. She snapped the lid shut. They'll cut off your hands. Then you'll have to weave for both of us. He said it lightly, but his eyes were serious, black as volcanic glass, just as prone to sharp edges. A shout echoed from the village. Maharlik tensed, his warrior's instincts flaring. My father's men. Ligaya shoved the jar into her basket. Go. He hesitated, then pressed something cold into her palm. A single copper bangle, warm from his skin. Wear it tonight, at the festival. Then he was gone, melting into the trees like morning mist. By nightfall, the village throbbed with firelight. Dozens of oil lamps hung from bamboo poles, their flames reflected in the lake until the water seemed to burn. The agongongs pulsed like a heartbeat, driving dancers into frenzied circles. Ligaya sat apart from the revelry, her loom propped against a nara tree. She'd threaded the first strands with Maharlik's stolen dye, blood-red patterns taking shape beneath her fingers. Around her wrist, the copper bangle gleamed dully. You should be dancing. Bayurai materialized from the shadows, her bone necklace rattling like dry leaves. The old priestess smelled of crushed ginger and something darker, burnt offerings perhaps. Her left eye was clouded white from when Fu Dalu had touched her during a trance. The loom calls me, Ligaya said, carefully. Bayurai's good eye dropped to the bangle. As does the Datu's son, it seems. Before Ligaya could respond, the drums fell silent. The Datu himself stood at the central fire pit, his bronze pectoral glinting. Behind him, Maharlik stood stiff-backed, his jaw set. A vision came at dusk, the Datu announced. The crowd stilled. Fu Dalu is displeased. Bayurai stepped forward, raising her arms. The firelight carved hollows beneath her cheekbones. The god demands a bride, a weaver who dreams his patterns. A murmur swept through the crowd. Ligaya's fingers clenched around her half-woven cloth. Then, the unthinkable. Bayurai's gnarled finger pointed directly at her. Ligaya, daughter of the lost weaver, you are chosen. Maharlik's sword was halfway drawn before his father's guards seized him. The Datu's voice cracked like thunder. The god has spoken. At moonrise tomorrow, she goes to Lake Sebu. Ligaya said nothing. The copper bangle bit into her wrist as she stood, her unfinished weaving fluttering to the ground, a splash of crimson on dark earth, like fresh blood. A tattoo needle bit deep. Ligaya clenched her teeth as Bayurai carved spiral patterns into the backs of her hands, the mark of Fu Dalu's bride. The priestess worked by candlelight, the flame guttering in the thick smoke of burning dita bark, its narcotic fumes meant to blur the pain. The god prefers you awake, Bayurai muttered. Her remaining eye gleamed with unnatural wetness as she dipped the thorn needle into charcoal paste. He wants to taste your fear in the blood. Ligaya's younger sister Dalisay watched from the corner, her small fists clutching their mother's abaca burial shroud. The scent of corpse flowers from the woven fibers mixed with the metallic tang of fresh blood. Stop it! You're hurting her! Dalisay lunged forward, but the village women held her back. Their hands, calloused from pounding rice, left bruises on the girl's thin arms. Ligaya didn't scream. Not when the needle reached bone. Not when Bai Ure smeared crocodile bile into the fresh wounds to brighten the scars. She focused on the copper bangle around her wrist, the one Maharlik had given her. The metal had grown warm, almost burning, as if reacting to her pulse. They kept Maharlik in the boar pit, a circular depression behind the warrior's longhouse, usually used to test young men against angry beasts. Now it held the Datu's heir. Moonlight sliced through the bamboo slats above, painting stripes on Maharlik's sweat-slicked torso. His bahag loincloth was torn, revealing a fresh laceration across his thigh, where his father's men had cut him during the struggle. The wound pulsed red, dripping onto the dried boar blood already staining the earth. Above him, his cousin Lumad stood guard, chewing betel nut. "You're a fool," Lumad spat, the red juice running down his chin like thin blood. "That weaver girl has had Fu Dalu's mark since birth. Everyone knows her mother dreamed of drowning." Maharlik surged upward, his manacled wrists straining against the posts. The bronze shackles, meant for traitors, had rubbed his skin raw. "Her mother died of fever, you shit-eating." After dreaming of the lake, Lumad kicked dirt into the pit. "The god has always wanted their bloodline. Tonight he collects." From the village center, drums began to thunder, the procession starting. Maharlik's body moved before his mind caught up. With a roar, he slammed his forehead into the pit's support post. The bamboo shuddered. Again. Again. On the third impact, something cracked. Whether his skull or the wood, he didn't care. The entire structure groaned. Lumad stumbled back as the pit's covering collapsed inward. Maharlik was on him before he hit the ground, teeth sinking into the soft flesh below Lumad's ear. The coppery gush of blood filled his mouth as he wrenched sideways, ripping. Lumad's scream was cut short by a knife-hand strike to the throat. Maharlik spat out the chunk of flesh, grabbed Lumad's kris dagger, and ran toward the drumbeats. They had painted Ligaya's face with crushed galangal root, the yellow paste drying into a cracked mask that itched like insect bites. Her funeral malong clung to her damp skin, the cowrie shells clicking with every step. The procession wound through muddy paddies, the villagers' torches reflecting in the standing water like a trail of fallen stars. Children threw sampagita petals that stuck to Ligaya's bare feet, their sweetness clashing with the reek of sacrificial chickens from earlier rituals. Bai Ure led the way, her spinal necklace rattling, each vertebra taken from a previous sacrifice. The priestess chanted, "Fu Dalu of the deep waters, we bring you unbroken skin, we bring you unspilled seed. Take this vessel, spare our bellies." Ligaya's fingers found the hidden knife in her sash, a tiny bone blade Dalisay had slipped her during the tattooing. Not enough to kill, just enough to make a point. Then, chaos. Maharlik erupted from the tall kogon grass, his body a mass of open wounds and fury. The kris dagger flashed, slicing through the rope binding Ligaya's wrists. "Move!" he roared, shoving a warrior into the paddies. The man's face hit the irrigation dike with a wet crunch. For one crystalline moment, Ligaya hesitated. She saw the Datu's face twisting in betrayed fury. Dalisay struggling against the women holding her. The lake beyond, its surface suddenly still as glass, Maharlik grabbed her hand, the one with the bangle. "Ligaya, now!" The lake inhaled. They ran. Branches lashed Ligaya's face as Maharlik dragged her through the undergrowth. The lake's edge loomed ahead, its waters black and still as a corpse's eye. Maharlik's breath came in ragged gasps. "There's a cave. Visayan traders use it. We can..." A horn sounded. Torches flared in the trees. The Datu's voice roared, "You bring ruin upon us!" Ligaya looked at Maharlik, really looked, at the boy who stole dyes for her, at the warrior who bled for her, at the fool who would die for her. The lake exhaled, a cold, wet breath. She made her choice. Wrenching free, she sprinted for the water. "Ligaya, no!" She didn't turn back, didn't hesitate. The lake swallowed her whole. For 3 heartbeats, there was silence. Then, the god answered. The waters exploded. A wave taller than the dipterocarp trees surged forth, swallowing warriors whole. Maharlik's scream was the last thing Ligaya heard before the darkness took her. Later, survivors would argue about what happened next. Some claimed a giant hand made of water rose from the lake. Others swore they saw a spectral crocodile with eyes like burning coconuts. All agreed on this when Ligaya wrenched free of Maharlik's grip and ran toward the water. The world held its breath. She didn't jump. She walked in, step by step, until the black water swallowed her painted face. Maharlik's scream split the night. Then, retribution. The wave came from nowhere, 30 feet high, carrying dead branches and the skeletons of long-drowned animals. It smashed into the procession, scattering bodies like rice grains. Bai Ure's spinal necklace exploded, vertebrae flying like shrapnel. The Datu was swept into the trees, his leg snapping against a tamarind trunk with an audible snap. Maharlik fought the current, his muscles straining as he crawled toward where Ligaya had vanished. The water boiled around him, fish floating belly up as if cooked alive. Then, silence. The lake went preternaturally calm. On the shore, 7 warriors dead, their mouths stuffed with lakeweed. The Datu mewling like an infant, his mind broken. Maharlik's Chris dagger embedded in a rock, blade first and floating in the shallows. A single blood-red tinalak cloth, perfectly dry. Dalisay woke to the sound of weeping women scraping their cheeks with river stones, the old way of mourning, one that hadn't been practiced since the last great famine. The air smelled of burnt herbs and spoiled milk, a desperate attempt to ward off evil. She stepped outside her family's torogan, her bare feet pressing into the mud still damp from last night's unnatural rain. The village was eerily silent, save for the occasional whimper of a child whose teeth had fallen out in the night. Her sister's loom still stood where Ligaya had left it, the half-finished crimson tinalak now covered in a layer of fine black silt, as if the lake itself had spat it back. Bai Ure crouched near the ashes of the central fire pit, her spinal necklace missing 3 vertebrae. Her lips moved soundlessly, her cloudy eye now fully white, her good one bloodshot and unblinking. "She's gone," Dalisay said, her voice hollow. The priestess didn't look up. "No, she's just changed." When Tandang the one-eyed fisherman stumbled into the village, his boat was filled with water but didn't sink. His remaining eye was wide with terror, his lips cracked from screaming. Dalisay was the first to reach him. "They're down there," he gasped, clutching her wrists with fingers that smelled of rotting reeds. "They're building something. A palace. A kingdom. And..." His voice dropped to a whisper. "They're not alone." Dalisay forced fermented rice wine between his lips until he spoke again. "The warriors who drowned, they stand guard now. Their eyes are open. Their skin doesn't rot. And the prince..." Tandang shuddered. "He carries your sister like a bride. And she's smiling." That night, Dalisay dreamed of black water and hands pulling her under. Dalisay took the smallest dugout canoe, the one Ligaya had taught her to paddle. She brought Ligaya's unfinished tinalak, the red one, still smelling of stolen dye. Maharlik's first hunting knife, the blade notched from childhood mistakes. A lock of their mother's hair, kept hidden in a bamboo tube since the burial. The lake was too still, the surface like polished obsidian. She didn't call out. She didn't need to. The water shivered, then parted. Not like in the old stories, where God split seas with a gesture, but slowly, thickly, like syrup pouring backward. And there, standing on the lakebed as if it were solid ground, Ligaya and Maharlik. Her sister's hair floated around her like ink spilled in water, her funeral malong now stitched with luminous pearls. Maharlik's skin was pale as drowned flesh, but his grip on Ligaya's hand was fierce, possessive. Behind them stood the 7 warriors, their eyes milky, their mouths sewn shut with abaca thread. Dalisay's breath caught. At. Ligaya smiled, the same smile she'd given when teaching Dalisay to weave. But her eyes were black from edge to edge. Maharlik raised their joined hands. Between their fingers, the copper bangle glowed, crusted with living coral. The water shuddered. Then, 9 bubbles rose, each as large as a child's head, each containing 1. A year's worth of fish, alive, flipping inside their spheres. 2. Enough rice to replant the fields, each grain streaked with crimson. 3. The children's lost teeth, now sharp as fangs. And in the 9th bubble, a baby crocodile, its scales gleaming like newly forged copper. Ligaya's voice echoed inside Dalisay's skull. Feed him well, little sister. The village adapted. The crimson rice grew unnaturally fast, its stalks whispering at dusk. The copper crocodile patrolled the shallows, its jaws snapping shut on those who spoke against the drowned lovers. Bai Ure was the first to disappear. Then the elders who had voted for the sacrifice. Then the hunter who mocked Maharlik's memory. Dalisay, now the village's reluctant priestess, wove new tanalak from the abaca that grew along the lake's edge. Darker, stronger, threaded with something that wasn't quite fiber. At night, she dreamed of black water and hands pulling her under, and she let them. Dalisay's choice. 1 year later. I stand at the lake's edge, my golden eye reflecting the full moon. The copper crocodile circles my ankles, its scales warm against my skin. It has grown as long as a war canoe, its jaws strong enough to snap a man in half. Behind me, the village sleeps, unaware. The water shivers. I don't hesitate. I step forward, the black silt rising to greet me like an old friend. The cold wraps around my ankles, my knees, my waist. And then hands, familiar and loving, pull me under. My sister's voice whispers through the water, "Welcome home." Above, the crocodile slips beneath the surface, its tail flicking once before the lake goes still. And on the shore, left behind, a new tanalak, perfectly dry, woven in abaca, black as a moonless night, the pattern unmistakable. A girl with one golden eye, walking into the deep. And so the drowned kingdom waits for the next dreamer to pull its threads. But until then, stay wary of dark waters, fellow storytellers. Like this story? Smash that like button and ring the notification bell for more tragic folklore. This has been Stark. Maraming salamat for watching.